In this video, I'm going to show how to make these felt ornaments. Really, this video is a jumping off point though. You can certainly make exactly what I'm making, but you can also use your imagination and make whatever you want, whatever you have the supplies for. So let me share a few supplies that we're going to be using. First of all, you need pieces of felt in whatever colors you want. Some of these I got from my local craft store. Others I got off of Etsy. And some of the things, like this little pack is one I got from Moda on Amazon. Just packs of wool scraps and felt scraps and things that I could use. And I got this from a local fabric store, which is just a bag of random wool scraps that I thought would be fun to use as well. You also will need some kind of fabric glue. I'm just using Mod Podge fabric glue and some tapestry and embroidery needles in various sizes and some scissors to cut the wool. A way to transfer your pattern onto your fabric. So if you're using a darker fabric, then you need something like a chalk pencil, or this is just a peel off China marker by Sharpie. For lighter fabrics, you could use a pencil or a black Sharpie marker. And then you also need just some kind of pattern that you can use. And you can always draw one or make one. This is a printable of a free vintage image that I just traced with transfer paper onto a cereal box and made a little template for these flying swallows. Or you can use cookie cutters. And then taking a look at some inspiration. So these are some wool ornaments that I have. This is one, I don't even remember. I think somebody gave this to me as a gift, but I like the simplicity of it. This one is stuffed, which I decided not to stuff any of mine just because it just adds a whole other layer. I want these to be fairly quick projects, but have the same look. This one is needle felted. It's handmade in Mongolia, but I like the little pattern here, just how simple it is, but pretty, of this kind of embroidered design. And then these are from Anthropology. And again, we've got felted wool and then some layered details of felt and wool and some embroidery details. So this is just kind of a jumping off point for inspiration for me. And you can certainly work off of anything that inspires you. Okay, so we'll start with these with the swallow ornament. So I've already made one. This one's finished. This one's kind of halfway through. And let's start one from the beginning. So I start by putting the cardboard pattern I made down. And then I'm tracing it with this China marker. Okay. And you can see you have just enough to be able to cut it out. And these little scraps I'm going to put in my scrap bag to save for little details. Because the marking is on this side, I'm going to flip the bird over. I'm not actually going to flip the bird. I'm going to flip this bird over like that. And then also, if there's any little rough scissor cuts, you can go ahead and clean those up. For the backing, I'm using this thicker piece of felt in a cream color. So what I'm doing now is I'm cutting, and I'm really just eyeballing it. I'm cutting a border around the bird. And this bird is going to get stitched down, but I want to glue it as well. So this is what I'm using the fabric glue for. And this just helps to hold it in place while I'm doing the embroidery so it doesn't shift around. And you don't need to use a ton of glue. Again, this is really just to kind of help it stick in place. Now, if you don't want to do any embroidery detail, this is where you really could just glue down some pieces of some other pieces of felt, like little pieces. Let me give you an example of maybe what I would do. And don't panic about getting glue on the rest of the felt. It will dry clear. So there we go. There's an idea of just using felt pieces, and then use some yarn. So this is just some Woolies Thick and Quick by Lion Brand. And let's just kind of play with this. So as you can see, I'm just sort of making it up as I go along. There isn't going to be a wrong way to make these. And one thing I'm going to do is to help these stay in place where there are curves, I'm just going to use these little clothespins. So this one has already been glued down, and if you want to, you can always put a book on it just to hold it in place. And then we're going to use an embroidery needle. This is DMC Pearl Floss that I'm using. I think this is in Ecru. Okay, so we've threaded on one end, and then we're going to put a knot in the other end. And we're just gonna do a very simple stitch around the border. You can see that I was not being super tedious with this. It does not have to be perfect. It's just the overall effect of it. I was a little bit more consistent with this one. So when you get to the end here, you can just, it looks like I have a little spot where I got snagged or something. So anyway, we'll tie this off together. If the backing bothers you, then you can always cover it up with a thin piece of felt. Just cut it out and glue it on when you're all done. That would be fine. I kind of like seeing a bit of the work and that it is homemade. You could even sign the back or something. So that's just up to you. And now I'm going to add just the little embellishments. You could do all sorts of things, like adding a little snowflake, adding an initial, adding details of bird feathers. I mean, you can really do whatever you want with this. Again, I just want to keep this simple. There are tutorials and patterns out there for really elaborate felt ornaments, and sometimes you want to make something, but you don't have all day, and you also don't want it to be super time consuming or something that you have to use a lot of attention on. So this is something you can make just while you're watching TV or when you have a little bit of downtime. And they don't take very long, probably about 15 to 20 minutes per ornament. And of course it goes quicker once you kind of have your system down. And then we'll add on a little bit of ribbon to hang it from. We'll just tack it into place. You could use some glue. I'm going to start with the underside, And since this piece of wool is thick, I'm only going through a little bit of it, so it's not going to show through to the other side. So the ribbon is nice and secure and you don't see anything from the top. But I think what I'll do with this one is go back through and add in some embroidery detail. I think that'll be kind of interesting. I'm thinking what I would like to do is to stitch with the twist of the yarn. I think that'll look really cool. To make these little kind of berries, I'm just stitching a little stem. And then at the end of the stem, coming back up. And then I'm just picking up enough fabric to make a knot. And then I tie it 2 more times inside that knot. And then go back under. There we go. So my easy version ended up being more complicated, but I do love how this turned out. It just gives you a lot of different options and ideas for what you can do for these felt ornaments. And if you wanted to just keep it with just the yarn and gluing down some felt, that would be fine. You don't have to add any embroidered detail. I just think for me, that's a part of kind of the fun creative process of it. And I'm going to tie this final piece off, and same thing, I'll tack on I'll probably use a piece of the yarn to hang it just so it has a nice cohesive look.